Welcome, one and all, to a very special episode of Just Interrogations. What makes it so special? Well, if you've been paying attention to the channel over the past month or so, you'll have noticed a majority of my social medias have been covered in ominous black clouds, warning that Season 2 will soon be upon us. And that is the case. However, we couldn't very well start Season 2 without first giving Season 1 the finale it deserves. After all, this first season is what made everything possible. It started the very channel itself, and without everything that was developed to be released here, there would be no Season 2 to move on to. So, to properly close out the first season of this life-changing YouTube channel, I've decided to get a collection of unreleased episodes from the season and just drop them all at once for you to enjoy. Now, these are fully produced Just Interrogations true crime videos that for one reason or another never got posted to the channel. But, in the name of closure, and moving on to bigger and better things, I say screw it. After all the dedication you've shown as my audience, I feel like this is the least I could do. These videos are essentially the same as the day they were exported, and are perfect for a lovely stroll down memory alley. Just remember to never, ever...
You've got mail.
Told you I was filming today. Would be very disrespectful to my audience to interrupt. Will call back later. Cannot attend. Sorry. Okay, sorry about that. Anyway, at the risk of your very life, make sure you absolutely do not... Hold on. What, Jay? For real? Now. Do you know how far that is? Seriously? If you weren't such an incredible interior designer, I wouldn't be doing this. But you know what? Fine. Yeah, I'll leave right now. Alright, I'll see you in a little, June. Bye-bye. Sorry, this will only take a few. I'll be right back. Well, looks like it's time for another one of June's journeys. And while I'm stuck in traffic, I'll have plenty of time to play my favorite mobile game, June's Journey. Oh hey, look at that. For anyone who doesn't know, which should be none of you by the way, June's Journey is a free-to-play, hidden object, murder mystery, and fantasy mansion building game. A combination the gaming community has been begging for. Finally here and in top form. The hidden object parts remind me of all the good times I had with my parents doing I Spy books together, but revamped for the modern era, with tons of variety and beautifully detailed scenes to investigate. While the mansion building parts, with all the upgrades and customizations you can earn, lets me have just the slightest feel of what it might be like to own property in my lifetime. And the murder mystery stuff? Don't even get me started. I do this for a living, and even I was caught off guard by that stuff. You can get your copy on the Google Play or iOS mobile stores, or on PC via Facebook Games. Or you could just scan that little QR code that's been floating around the screen this whole time. Thank you to my friend June for sending me on this little journey, and thank you to June's Journey for sponsoring this video. Definitely check the game out in the links below, as you'll both be getting a genuinely cool little game, and you'll be helping the channel out immensely. Plus, it's free, so... come on. Anyway, now that that's been taken care of, we can finally get on to the unseen videos. Although I'd much rather watch those in my dystopian cyberpunk detective's office, so let's go do that. Okay, To begin, we're going to watch a video about a mentally disturbed young woman who, when forced to contend with the early effects of quarantine, finally snapped and decided to commit a truly heinous act. Even stranger though, she didn't have to do it alone, because when she told her elderly parents about her gruesome plan, they both volunteered to join her. What is easily one of the most unsettling, bone-chilling cases I've ever covered, let's begin our journey through the cutting room floor of the Just Interrogations studio with the case of Morgan Elizabeth Daub, martyr or murderer. When the world shut down in 2020 as a result of the coronavirus pandemic, it affected a lot of things in a lot of ways. Financial, logistical, medical, and worst of all, social. Most of the extroverts were able to transition to isolating well enough, staying in touch with people by phone or video chat, albeit begrudgingly, while some of the more introverted among us weren't even particularly bothered when everything kicked off, rather enjoying the idea that keeping to yourself and staying away from others was actually being encouraged. But what about the people who were already isolating before the pandemic? People already living their lives withdrawn from society, be it for physical or more likely mental factors, whose small window serving as their only reference point for societal norms and expectations was now entirely cut off, and they were left alone with nothing but the immediate people around them and their own thoughts. This is Morgan Elizabeth Daub, and she was unfortunately one of those people. This picture was taken in 2017, after Morgan bowled a perfect game in the amateur league she participated in with her mother. At the time, she was described as smart but timid. Outside of bowling, people in her hometown of York, Pennsylvania, didn't really see her. She didn't attend any social gatherings, have any sort of dating life, and didn't even have any social media, which is why it was so strange that on September 18th, 2022, she uploaded a video to YouTube with the following description.
I had a few things to get off my mind. Needed to share a bit of the insanity that's been going on in my life lately. There is more truth in my 30 minutes of unscripted rambling that most of you have heard in the last 30 days. As of yet, I cannot fill in any more details or release any evidence of my truthful claims or explain what started all of this. I stated that my situation is like being forced or conscripted into the US military. It's actually more like slavery. My family and I are law-abiding American citizens, yet we are being denied fundamental human rights. Multiple basic constitutional rights and freedoms have been and are currently being infringed. We are daily enduring all manner of harassment and illegal, unconstitutional surveillance. The majority of this is, shall we say, most likely being executed by Donald Trump's military and intel agencies. Even more unbelievably, President Trump and the military seem to have the backing of Trump's new spiritual advisory board, which might include Mike Thompson, Kevin Zadal, Chris Yoon, Jim Stockstill, and others, as well as his legal advisors, which might include Rudy Giuliani, Jenna Ellis, Lynn Wood, and more, and all of what they are doing to us, and yes, even with attempted mind control. I do believe that much of this falls into the category of human rights abuses. Oh, the public outrage. Since Trump is behind the scenes running a shadow administration as our lawful, rightful president, we have absolutely no recourse to fight these heinous actions. It would be an exercise in futility to address this with any government entity. I am hoping that shedding a little light on the subject will make them back off somewhat. If not, at least I have finally broken radio silence on this. We are also, shall we say, apparently under massive assault by Barack Hussein Obama's shadow administration. I am a patriot, and I am an indescribable threat to the entire establishment, which happens to now include Donald Trump. You will find out why I'm such a threat soon enough. For now, let's just say that all of these people, shall we say, apparently have a lot of evil crimes to hide, and I am the news now. By the way, if I want to make up a story, I would take the time to script one far better and more believable than this. You want real proof? Watch The Panic. Subtle, but real. Hashtag human rights abuses. Hashtag fuck all tyrants. Hashtag my body, my choice. Hashtag panic incoming. Hashtag like Emery harder than Flint. P.S. As always, if I ever find out that I am wrong about anything, I will do my best to correct the record as soon as possible.
The description gives you a pretty good idea of the video's content, or at least most of it.
It's almost half an hour long, and there's a lot of stuff that's just repeated, so I'll just touch on the key points. It begins much in the same way as any political conspiracy theory video, with disjointed ramblings about the deep state and shadow administrations. Morgan sounds frantic, like she's trying to get out as much information as possible, as quickly as possible, but she keeps getting sidetracked, which leads to deviations and tangents that are only vaguely related to what she was trying to convey in the first place. This is likely due to the fact that she believes she's being watched and pursued by hundreds of millions of people, under the direct order of rightful President Donald Trump. At one point, an Intel driver update bubble pops up in her taskbar, which she points out as confirmation from her friends in the military, who know she's recording this video. While a bit strange, it's unfortunately not anything unique. YouTube is full of stream of consciousness political rant videos. But a bit further in, it starts to take a turn. Morgan begins implying that the reason the military is after her has something to do with her religious beliefs. Morgan, along with her parents, was a very devout, traditional Christian. People who were aware of the family said that they really only knew two things about them. Two things that they were very vocal and forward about. They were Christians, and they were Trump supporters. Now let me quickly say, this isn't a political channel, and I don't think politics have any place in anything outside of politics. I'm only mentioning this because it's relevant to the case. Please don't fight in the comments. She doesn't say specifically what aspect of her beliefs are being targeted, but she does make some vague proclamations that God will be fully releasing me soon, and He will give us back the voice and the platform that was taken from us 17 years ago. She also claims she's been brought into something so much bigger and so much more evil than you can possibly imagine. So at this point, while her behavior is definitely worrisome, and she's clearly suffering from some kind of mental issues, she hasn't really harmed anyone. It's always sad to see someone in a state like this, but there has to be more. How did it go from this to that? To answer that, I need to show you the second video, which was posted to Morgan's channel about 2 months later, on November 26th, 2022. This one's shorter and a bit more focused, but it's still almost 10 minutes in its original form. But I think it's important for you to actually see this one, so I cut it down to remove all the long pauses, repetition, and asides, putting it back together as just the main intended point of the video.
Hello everyone. Hello. I hope this travels the world. I really do. Finally God showed me the reason why. Game over, devil. I, Morgan Elizabeth Daub, York, Pennsylvania, United States of America, do hereby abdicate the throne of the United Kingdom, along with all the rights, privileges, etc., appertaining thereunto. I'm returning power to the people of the United Kingdom. Oh, please, let this rock the world today. No Queen Elizabeth III of the United Kingdom. I know they'd love me. I know they would. I was next in line for the throne of England. United Kingdom. Not anymore. You know, a devil goes for too much. Thinks he can outwit the Most High God. I refuse to be queen of the United Kingdom. I will not be your next queen. If you honor me at all, you will set up a republic, a system of government similar to what the United States has. Our Constitution, study it, throw off the royalty, throw off the monarchy. Somebody somewhere down the line decided they were going to be royal. Nobody was actually born royal. And then somebody else went along with it. It's just funny. This was the penultimate plan against me and against God. Didn't know I was the ideal pick for Antichrist, for the devil. For all intents and purposes, I have abdicated. I refuse to be queen. There it is. My signature. Right there. I hate these selfie videos. Why do they flip everything around? It's stupid. Don't ask me. Maybe it flips back around when it saves. Is that what it does? I don't know anything about technology. And yet I figure out all their algorithms and stuff too. It's the beginning of the shaking. The Antichrist will seize it by intrigue and then set himself up as king. Yeah, it's done. I have formally abdicated. I'm a bondservant of Christ. I'm a daughter of the Most High God. I am royalty in Jesus. I am a royal priesthood. I rule and reign with Jesus in heavenly places. I am a king and a priest unto my God, Yahweh, Elohim El Elyon. I am not the Christ. I am not Antichrist. I am not the Christ. I am not false prophet. But I am a prophet of the Most High God. And I'm ready to roar for him. Lord will roar from Zion. And they fucked with the wrong family. They really fucked with the wrong family. It's time for the king to roar. The one true king, King of kings, Lord of lords, King Jesus. The one true. Amen.
Now, even after multiple watches, without the gift of hindsight and further knowledge of the case, it can be hard to decipher what exactly she's trying to say between the burrowing eye contact and the maniacal laughter. So allow me. But before I do, I want to make it clear, I'm not making fun of this woman, or analyzing her distorted sense of reason for a laugh. She was clearly unwell, and if things like this are to be prevented in the future, we need to understand what she was thinking, why she was thinking it, and what those thoughts led to. So, here we go. For reasons we're not quite sure of, and that were never expanded on in the results of the investigation, Morgan believes herself to be the next rightful heir to the throne of the United Kingdom, after Queen Elizabeth's death about a month earlier at the time of filming. It was stated by police that they believed Morgan, as well as her family, suffered from a variety of mental health issues, though we don't know if they came to that conclusion by way of previous reports or diagnoses, or if it was derived entirely from the events we're discussing today. This could also be the reason for why, towards the end of the video, she comments it's the beginning of the shaking. But it's safe to say that this obviously was a delusion, and Morgan did not have any rightful such claim, but she was genuinely fully convinced that she did. She also speaks about God finally telling her why, presumably why she was here or why she was supposed to take the throne in the first place. But this is quickly followed up with, "Game over, devil," which means that the devil wanted her to take the throne. God has told her why she shouldn't, thus the reason for her abdication. This is elaborated on a bit when she says, "This was the penultimate plan against me, and against God. Didn't know I was the ideal pick for the Antichrist," which reveals the true underlying motive for all this, which was further backed up by evidence and notes found at the scene. Morgan believed she was the Antichrist, and it was the devil's plan to put her in a powerful position, presumably to do harm. In her own words, the Antichrist will seize the throne by intrigue and set himself up as king. The video ends with multiple rapid-fire declarations about being a priest and a king under her God. Elohim El Elyon means the Most High God, and I am not the Christ, I am not the Antichrist, I am not a false prophet. She closes the video saying that she's ready to roar for him, and it's time for the king to roar, probably tying into the name of her YouTube channel, Lioness Arising, which is also the name of a motivational book and sermon by Christian author Lisa Bevere, and while there's nothing tying those particular works directly to Morgan, it's not unlikely that she was at least aware of them. After this video, Morgan was quiet on social media through the rest of 2022. On January 24th, 2023, she posted her final video, which was a simple 5-second clip of text that read,
"Follow me as I follow Christ."
Sometime between posting that video and the morning of January 25th, one of the Daub's neighbors heard 3 gunshots coming from their backyard. Later that day, the neighbor tried to look over their back fence and see if the family was around, but only saw some trash and deflated Christmas decorations, so they called the police to request a welfare check. When police arrived, the front door was locked, so they went around back and hopped the fence, which is when they realized that those deflated Christmas decorations were actually the lifeless bodies of the Daub family. They were laying in the backyard in a straight line. James was furthest from the house, lying face down with a bullet wound in the back of his head and a pair of earmuffs to his side. Behind him was Deborah, also with a bullet wound to the back of the head and a pair of earmuffs nearby, wearing a leather pistol holder with a pistol and shell casing lying next to her. And finally was Morgan, wearing earmuffs and a holster, pistol and shell casing nearby, and wound in the back of her head, seemingly self-inflicted. Inside the house, police found the family dog alive and well, and a series of notes written by the family. All of the family, not just Morgan. They explained that this was a mutual decision, made by all of them, to collectively take their own lives in a three-way mutual self-murder pact. According to the notes, Morgan had approached her mother several weeks before, explaining that she was hearing evil voices in her head, telling her that she was the Antichrist and was destined to do the work of the devil. Deborah, being a devout Christian and not having any faith or trust in the government and modern medical practices, determined that prayer was the best option. However, as time passed, the voices only got louder, and Morgan decided that the only thing to do, in her mind, was end her life before these predictions came true. Having made up her mind, Deborah's chief concern was that she didn't want Morgan to die alone at such a young age. So Deborah decided to die with Morgan. The two then explained their plan to James, who initially didn't want to die, but apparently after thinking it over, decided he didn't want to live without his wife and daughter, so decided to join as well. It's believed that a combination of mental illness, religious devotion, and fear of the direction the United States was headed in made a decision that for most of us would be unthinkable, remarkably easy for the Daubs to make. After writing letters to family explaining their decision, as well as their wishes for the estate, the Daubs put on their earmuffs, grabbed their guns, and went out back. It seems the initial plan was for each person to take their own life one at a time, starting with James. However, according to his note, he was too shaky to do it himself, so Deborah took the gun, pointed it at the back of his head, and shot. Deborah herself was supposed to do the same, but also apparently became too nervous to go through with it, so Morgan had to do it, putting the gun to the back of her head and pulling the trigger, much the same as Deborah had just done to her husband. Finally, it was Morgan's turn. Being the last one left, she didn't have the option of having someone else do the deed. Police stated that they spent some time entertaining possible foul play, but forensic specialists agreed that all evidence pointed to the story told in the notes. The timing, the bullet trajectories, the wounds, everything lined up with this truly being a mutual decision. There's still some speculation and exaggeration online about the notes all being written by the same person, or about Morgan being found holding a large medieval sword engraved with the Sword of the Lord, but none of this is mentioned in the police's definitive release, so take those with a couple grains of salt. Personally, I think it's obvious what happened here. A family that was already struggling spent years in solitude, with only their religious and political beliefs running wild in their heads, continually warping their view of the outside world, ramping up fears of persecution and cataclysm until one of them broke and took the rest with them. It's tragic because if even one of these people was aware of their shared delusions or seeking out help for their mental health issues, this possibly could have been avoided. But instead, they played into one another and allowed things to get out of control. If you learn anything from this case in this video, let it be that mental health needs to be a priority. If you're struggling at all, however mild you may believe it to be, get help while you still can. As these things progress, it can be easy to lose sight of where you are versus where you started, and by the time you try to look back, it can be too late.
Now, given the nature of that case, I don't really have any significant updates to give you. It seems like any extended members of the Daub family haven't come forward or made any statements to the media. There hasn't been any changes in the perceived motive or any involvement of foul play. None of the speculation, exaggeration, or conspiracy theories seem to have panned out. Shocker. And while multiple additional articles have been written in the time since mentioning the eponymous Sword of the Lord, there still hasn't been any confirmation directly from police, or has it been listed in any official evidence files that I could locate. So just be careful believing that particular bit if you have hypertension or something. That video, though, despite not being posted to the channel as originally intended, still ended up being quite important. It was the first video I made in the new, current JI style, with the cyberpunk aesthetic, animated background, and actually fully appeared on camera. That's one of the main reasons I was kinda iffy about putting it out. I wasn't sure about my presence and ability to keep people engaged, and it was just so weird actually seeing myself on video that I ultimately wimped out. I'm glad I decided to revisit it though, because in hindsight, I'm actually pretty proud of that video, and I even got asked by Snapchat to make a 3-minute version as a demo pitch for a show. That clearly didn't go ahead, which is probably a good thing, considering my overall punctuality when it comes to videos and deadlines, but it really was a milestone of sorts for the channel. Not to mention my first collab with one of my true crime mentors and someone I'm happy to call a friend to this day, the lovely Yergi from the one and only Misery Machine. If by some insane coincidence you don't know who they are, I'll put a link in the description for you to check out, which you should. And if you'd like to see that little Snapchat version of the Daub video, it's posted on my Patreon somewhere. Now this next video is not only far more engaging than I remember it being, but it was one of the most enjoyable to make on my end, because in addition to the usual MO of discussing true crime, I got to do so collaboratively with 2 fellow creators in the space. I also got to flex my interviewing muscles a bit, and as you'll see, they turned out to be a little lackluster, which is one of the main reasons I ended up not posting this video the first time around. But after some reflections and second opinions, I've decided it deserves to be shared. The reason the format's a bit different is because this video was largely cut from my good friend Scribe Light's podcast, Living on Borrowed Crime, where he regularly puts together panels of various true crime creators and has them give their takes on various topics. And I had the privilege of being a guest/co-host on this particular episode. It's an awesome series that I'll link in the description, along with Scribe's channel, and the channel of the other creator on this episode, Music City 911. That's a show hosted by my guy Brandon, who's a real 911 operator, where he covers and discusses various calls he's gotten, their related cases, and things like that. He was kind enough to let Scribe, who's awesome and smart and says stuff like necessary pragmatism, and myself, who's less so, interview him and get his take on a call featured in my video on the Thomas Chan case, specifically the one from one of the victims, Lynn, and how the operator who took that call handled the situation, which I received and continue to receive countless comments about. I know there have been multiple warnings already about being careful if you're sensitive to disturbing audio, but this one is a real doozy, so I'll put up a warning with the relevant timestamp whenever the call is about to be played, so anyone who may be triggered can just mute the video and read the call instead, since it's fully transcribed on screen and still gives you more than enough context to follow along. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the smooth, sultry voice of Scribe Light, the expertise of Brandon, and the occasional, nasally interjections of yours truly, as we further discuss the heartbreaking case of Thomas and Andrew Chan and Lynn Witteveen. Alright, my second ever video on my new YouTube channel is officially done. I can't wait to hear what people have to say.
What the f is with the 911 operator asking all of those questions instead of just getting help out there pronto?
That damn operator, worse than a puppet.
That call was odd. You were stabbed. What's going on? Girl, are you dumb?
I just love stupid questions by the 911 answering machine.
This 911 operator is dumber than a box of rocks.
I had to skip the operator part. It just made me mad.
I can't keep listening to this operator.
Dude, if I was Lynn, I would have wanted to die listening to this operator.
911 operators piss me off so bad.
Dude, that
The operator had me pissed all the way off.
The operator should quite.
On January 7th, 2023, I uploaded my second ever video covering the case of Thomas Chan, a 16-year-old boy from Ontario, Canada who took way too many mushrooms
dissociated from reality, had a really bad trip, ended up breaking into his father's house, and attacked him and his stepmother with a knife, killing one and severely wounding the other, because he thought they were demons. The video began with 2 police emergency calls. One was made by Thomas's sister, Christina, who encountered Thomas during the narrow window in which he was starting to trip too hard, but before he completely lost connection with reality.
Hi, I require police.
Okay, go ahead.
My brother is being ridiculously aggressive right now. He broke someone's car window with a rock.
Okay.
He took mushrooms at 8 o'clock tonight, and he started freaking out, saying that he was scared, and he came up back to, and was talking to my mom, got scared, called us the devil, and ran outside of my mother's house.
But that's not what we're here to talk about. No, we're here for the second call, in which Thomas Chan's victim and stepmother, Lynn Witteveen, called police as she was being attacked. It's easily the most bone-chilling emergency call that I, and a lot of my viewers, have ever heard. However, since the day that video went up, there's been one major aspect my commenters have taken issue with: the dispatcher. As my intro hopefully demonstrated, people don't think she handled that call very well. And honestly, I can see where they're coming from. On one hand, when you call emergency services, you want someone to keep calm, get your information, tell you what to do, and tell you that you're going to be okay. And for the most part, that's what they do. But on the other hand, it's not every day that they get a call from someone as an attack is happening from the person being attacked. And no matter how well trained you are, I imagine it could throw anyone off their game. Personally, I thought she did all right. It wasn't the most comforting 911 call I've ever heard, and it's hard to tell if the fact that she's asking the same questions over and over is to keep the victim talking, or just because she's inept. But at the end of the day, the police did eventually show up, and Lynn did survive. So I figured she couldn't have done that bad of a job, right? But what do I know? I'm not a 911 dispatcher, and neither are you guys, for the most part. So this is all speculation. Until a little bit ago, at least, when I actually had the opportunity to sit down with a real, currently employed 911 dispatcher, along with my friend Scribe Light on his podcast, Living on Borrowed Crime. And I decided to get his professional opinion on this particular 911 call in order to put all the debate to bed, once and for all. So, for your viewing pleasure, here's that clip of myself and Scribe talking to Brandon of the YouTube channel Music City 911.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 7 of Living on Borrowed Crime, Real Talk with true crime content creators. I'm your host, Scribe Light, and joining me today is Brandon from Music City 911, a longtime podcast, relatively speaking, but relatively new YouTube channel. So, Brandon, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me on.
And also joining me today as a co-pilot for the interview is a familiar face to the series, Just Interrogations, as in Justin. Hello, Justin. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Stoked to be here.
Good thing. Brandon, I came across your channel completely by luck, I think, because you just started your YouTube channel relatively recently. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, I've only been on it for, maybe a couple of months.
Yeah, because I guess it was just a fluke of the algorithm or something, because usually small or relatively new channels don't just show up on screens that often. But I guess maybe something about the content I look at brought it up. And I've listened to several 911 channel or compilation videos before, and the difference here being that you have been a 911 dispatcher for 20 years.
Yeah, 23 actually, yeah.
23 years. And as I started listening to the episode and I heard you speaking, I didn't know the context of your experience with it at first, but there was something about the way you were talking about the events proceeding and also the performance of the 911 dispatcher that caught my attention more so than other things. And of course, as I listened to more of your content, I became more intrigued because, and no offense to Justin or any of the other guys I've talked to before, but unlike so many other content creators who are looking at cases or situations from sort of a observational perspective, you're effectively literally on the front lines of these things. And I think that's a very unique place to come from.
Yeah, it really is. It's, that's one of the things, like I enjoy a lot of other true crime channels, and, they they seem to find even more details than I can sometimes. So I try to put my own slant on things, just my own observations from being on the inside for so long, and I can see, hear, mostly hear, I guess, all the little intricacies of what's going on with the calls and everything.
So I was curious, 911 calls oftentimes in true crime content are used to supplement a larger story more than anything else. And of course, your podcast and series deals directly with 911 calls. Why was it important to you to focus why 911 calls in particular were something that you wanted to showcase to other people?
The 911 calls, that's my expertise. That's what I know about. So every one of my cases, I have to have either a 911 call or some sort of police audio, video, that type thing, something along that lines. I've only done a very few episodes where I've not had anything like that. And that's just because somebody may have asked me to look at something, or, something was a big case at the time, that type thing.
Justin, did you want to go over the clip that you had picked out?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So we're on to a little bit of procedure analysis here.
Yeah.
Sure.
Let me share this real quick.
So while he's pulling it up, I covered a case that was a young man he was from Canada, and what had happened was he took a heavy dose of magic mushrooms and started having a bad trip, and ultimately broke into his father and stepmother's house and ended up attacking them with a knife while he was tripping. Mm-hmm. So this call is actually a call from the stepmother right after she's been attacked and as she's being attacked. And the reason that I wanted to show you this one was because on the video that this is in, there's the 911 dispatcher is talking to the woman sort of throughout the entire thing, and she's remaining calm. She's asking basic questions about just where are you, what's going on. Even as she's screaming into the phone and being attacked, she keeps asking, like, where are you, what's happening now? And a lot of the comments that I see are people upset about, like, why is she waiting so long to send the ambulance? Why does she keep asking what's going on when she's yelling what's going on? And at first I had tried to respond and sort of explain that, at least from my understanding, I'm like, I think they sent it pretty right away. I think she's trying to keep her calm and talking. And especially she talks about like getting stabbed in the head. And I was trying to say she's trying to keep her coherent and speaking and answering questions. And a lot of people just either didn't understand that or thought that was wrong. So I wanted to sort of get your feedback on this call. And if you could just sort of explain more than likely from your experience why you think she's doing what she's doing, if you think that that assessment is correct, and just sort of your thoughts on this clip.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
all
cool.
Right. And if you want me to deposit at any point to comment, just give me a high sign and I can do that.
Okay.
There we go.
Hello. Hi, I'm being stabbed, and it's Haggis Road, and I love Haggis, and purpose, please. It's okay.
Yeah, I can't hear you. What did you say happened there?
What?
What did you say happened?
I'm being stabbed.
Okay, what's your name?
My name's Glenn, Thomas Tan, Andrew Tan.
Okay, you said you were stabbed?
Stabbed in the stomach, stabbed in the neck.
Okay, by who?
Blood everywhere. Help me, please, please, please. Haggis Drive.
Okay, who else is there? Hello? Hello?
Oh.
Hello?
I just got a knife in my head.
Who has a knife to your head?
Oh, I'm dead.
Hello?
Hello.
Hi, what's going on there?
I just got a knife stabbed in my head.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I...
Okay, all right, we've got police on the way, okay? They're coming, they're almost there. Okay, they're coming.
There you go.
Okay, yeah, I can break that down very easily. Yeah, when she said the ambulance is on the way, the ambulance had been on the way. Something like that.
That was the big thing. People kept seeming that only when she said the word ambulance did that mean that she like reached out to the ambulance. And
yeah, that's not the case at all. And people watching that, like immediately I saw that was about 1 minute and 38 seconds. That's, I mean, even if she waited until like that point, which I seriously doubt that she did, and I'll kind of break down like how different agencies work and stuff like that. But even at that point, that's still, I won't say necessarily like average, but that's still a very short call. There's
right.
sometimes where you'd have, you know, a lower priority thing like that, where you have multiple questions, depending on the type of, you know, scripts and things like that you have, if you have one at all, because a lot of places don't. It might be a little bit longer, but something like that, you got a stabbing, it's almost immediately sent. Once you know the address and the most basic information, address, phone number, in case you need to, you know, get disconnected and have to call them back or something like that. Once you have that and what happened, at that point you can dispatch them. And for speaking for my agency, we if we're on the phones, we're actually taking calls. That's all we're doing. So as we're taking these calls, we're typing all the information in. We've got the call sent up and it goes to a dispatcher who, while we're still on the phone with the people, they're dispatching the call out to whatever help is needed, if it's police, fire, medical, whatever like that.
Yeah, I saw that always. I mean, not just that call, but pretty much every call I've heard. The first thing is address and location. And if they don't give it 100%, it's, again, where are you? What's the address? What's the cross street? Like you were sort of saying earlier. And I mean, obviously it makes sense. And that was my impression too, looking at it sort of more analytically, obviously, which would be hard at the moment. But I sort of figured that's what was going on. It seemed like she was getting the most important information. She was making sure it was correct, and then moving on to the next most important piece of information. That's why it seemed like she was reiterating, making sure she got it correct, and it made sense to me. But yeah, I just wanted to show you that clip to hopefully get some sort of insight from someone who kind of understood what was going on there. And it's because people seem to think like, what, is she deaf? And it's like, no, I think she's trying to confirm and make sure she gets it to the right place.
Yeah, exactly. Because the worst thing that can happen on something like this is sending the responders to the wrong location, because it delays everything. If there's
right, even
there,
like a street over, it would be life or death. Absolutely.
And to go back to the whole active shooter scenario, the police officers that get out there first, your normal instinct was something like that. If you walk up on someone who's been, say they're shot in the neck and they're bleeding out, like if they don't get help right now, then they may die. And you see a police officer just walk over someone that's in that condition because they're going to try to stop the rest of the killing. That way, nobody else is harmed past that. That way, help can get to this person as quickly as possible. That's the same way with the 911 calls. It's sometimes
prioritization.
We'll have to get the information. We do all that stuff. I mean, a lot of people want to hear, oh, they're on the way. They're on the way. They want to be comforted while they're on the phone. That's not helping anything. That's, you know, one of the reasons why I said, you know, like sometimes might consider myself an asshole. I'm not. It might seem like I am on the telephone, but I'm getting the information quickly. I'm getting it the most efficiently as you can. And, you know, doing so gets help there faster. So, I mean, you know, you can be nice to someone after they get help there.
Right. It's the necessary pragmatism of an emergency situation. You can't let emotion get in the way. You're not a therapist. You're not you're not somebody's best friend or something. You're there to serve a function in order to save lives and or stop the bad guys. And yeah, and that's something that obviously a lot of people listening to these things, you know, because people want to be comforted. You know, they sort of project themselves into the situations of the callers, and they think to themselves, I don't want somebody who sounds like they don't care. I don't want somebody that sounds like they're being mean or something. But yeah, it's that detachment between what's necessary and what's desired. And there's the distance between those two things is miles when it comes down to saving lives. And I think more people need to try to understand that.
It's a situation where efficiency is key. You need to get the information. Yeah. You need to get it quick. And that's it. I just had one more real quick. I was just going to say, and some people sort of touched on it on the chat. So for a situation like that, I'm sure that, again, as you had mentioned, there's sort of like standard scripts and standard responses for various situations. But I imagine in a situation like that, obviously that would be an example of when you would use that discretion and that experience to be like, I need to get multiple police out there first before I send paramedics in. So I was just going to say it seems like, is there a pretty high degree of just sort of interpreting the situation? Because she didn't say send the police before you send the ambulance. So obviously there's a big degree of sort of reading the situation, again, that reading between the lines and sort of deciding who needs to get there first, what that top priority is, and how the situation needs to be handled.
Yeah, scene safety for everyone, the person that's involved, and then the responders as well. That's the highest priority. So, and it's kind of hard for some people to hear, but like the scene safety for the responders themselves, for us, that's the utmost priority. And I really hate to say it, the people who are calling in, they're kind of a secondary thing. And my only reason for saying that, and the way that this works is, they're the ones that come out to help. And if
I was going to say, because they're the ones getting sent in on your word, so you got to make sure you keep them safe and handle them.
Yeah, so they can help the next person. And if they're say that we forget something important, like has the suspect got a weapon? Is the suspect still there?
Right.
The police walk into a situation like that, not knowing that they may think that it's just a simple argument, and once they get there, the suspect pulls out a gun and shoots them. And if you fail to ask that question, that's a big, huge piece of it. So
of course.
Yeah. Well, it's just kind of a second nature type thing. Like I said before, once you do it so long, it's just exactly what to ask for. How to pull it from these people, and sometimes the people are not wanting to give it. They're not wanting to give the information. I mean, and sometimes that you'll figure out that. I think we mentioned something about this a little while ago. The type of inflection they're giving or how they're giving the information, you can kind of picture that, like, maybe this is not quite what they're depicting. I had one just today where a woman calls, and not to give all the details, but she calls and says that her ex-boyfriend shot at her car. And I was like, okay, well, where are you at? Because I'm thinking to myself initially when she calls in, this person has ran off from trying to get away from this person that's trying to shoot him, that type thing. And she's like, oh, I'm outside of his house right now. And as soon as that happened, I was like, okay, there's a little bit more to it. And then you hear her start yelling at him in the background, this person who apparently shot at her. So she's outside of the house and doing that. And once the police got out there, they started talking to her, and it turns out that she had a warrant, and she took off running from the police. So apparently
you almost have to like role play, and like you have to put yourself literally in those situations. And especially, like, I imagine, like you said, talking to like a domestic violence victim or someone, you can't take their words at face value. So you have to, that's so interesting, having to just constantly read between the lines. Like, it's almost like the stuff that I'm sure people don't say, or the way that they say it, is almost as important as what they're actually saying.
Yeah. And to be fair, we do have to, if someone tells us something, even if it's ludicrous, if that's what they're reporting to us, that's what we have to give in the call. Now
of course.
So like this woman, I put down exactly what she said, but I also put in that she is in front of the suspect's house and that she's yelling at him, and I don't hear him at all. So, I put all that information in the call.
So you guys have to like write up reports with that kind of stuff, not only the facts, but like your interpretation of the situation and sort of how you read it.
Not necessarily.
But I mean, it plays a role, like obviously your interpretation as much as like what they're literally saying.
It can sometimes. I mean, it's pretty rare that we'll have the 911 call actually picked apart like that. Our biggest role is just to get help out there and to get it done as best as we can. So once they get out there, you'd be amazed at how many times people will call in, like especially with that domestic type situation where they'll be right in the middle of a fight. I mean, they're screaming, you'll hear things being thrown around and maybe even an actual assault. And once the police get out there, 5, 10, 15 minutes later, everything's calm. Nobody wants to prosecute. Nobody wants anybody to go to jail, that type thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So, there you have it. The dispatcher did her job well.
Now we can stop all the hate comments and instead focus on how terrible of an interviewer I am.
Similar to the last video, there hasn't been many updates or developments regarding this case or the people involved since it was made. Thomas Chan has, understandably, seemingly decided to stay out of the public consciousness and kept to himself. I couldn't find anything to indicate whether or not he's still pursuing or practicing a career in psychology, but I can confidently say at least that he probably hasn't murdered anyone else, and hopefully is doing well. No clue about the operator either, but she did sound kinda older in the call, so maybe she's retired, maybe she's still working, who knows. Either way, this is another video I'm glad finally got to see the light of day. Despite the fact that I was clearly still learning how to use OBS and properly record live audio, I think it came out pretty well, and showed an interesting perspective on a unique case that people don't often get to see. Both Scribelight and Brandon are both still actively making content on their channels, so if you like my stuff or just true crime in general, definitely go check them out. Now, those were originally going to be the only unposted videos I was going to put in this compilation, as I thought the rest were either lost or not really worth revisiting. But I was actually able to recover one more video that I made about a case that was ongoing at the time. So while a few bits have since become irrelevant, it's still a brutal and fascinating case, and a lot has happened since. So, if you'll stick around for a second while I run through my usual little ending spiel, you can watch that latest video and hear about all the crazy stuff that's happened since it was made. I just wanted to thank everyone first for sticking with me through this last phase of Season 1. The many unexpected health struggles I've been facing, and unfortunately continue to face, definitely threw a wrench into my plans for consistent content output on the channel. But I'm finally in a place where I have the right help and the right systems to get back to regular releases of the interrogation videos you all love in bigger, better quality than ever before. That's why this transition to a new season felt necessary, almost like a new beginning for the channel. Plenty of all new, exclusive interrogations with better production quality, and the snark turned up to 11 are on the way. And I really hope you guys like Season 2. As part of this transition, I've also overhauled my Discord presence. My big public server is gone. It was a distraction and taking too much time away from creating content, as well as just causing more stress than it was worth. Instead, I now have a smaller, more exclusive server that's only available to patrons and YouTube members. We still do regular streams, from editing current videos to rewatching and commenting on old ones, to Q&As, or sometimes just hanging out. The smaller community allows me to get to know those of you that are there much better, and it's a much lighter load on me as well. It's available to all tiers, starting at just $1, so if you'd like to join, consider becoming a channel member or joining the Patreon via the links in the description below. And finally, I've seen in my analytics that most people skip this part, so I'll keep it brief, but maybe give it a chance, because you never know when you just might need it. Anyway, I wanted to remind you that you are loved, you are valued, you are needed, and if you're struggling, you are capable of change. No matter how alone you may feel, there are people who care and who need you in their life. There's never any shame in asking for help, and regardless of what you're contending with, there are people and places out there that can help you, such as those on screen and linked in the description. Nothing lasts forever, even though sometimes it can feel like it might. Things will get better, and one day you'll be glad you're still here. Never let a temporary situation drive you to a foolish permanent decision, especially when the light at the end of the tunnel that you can't see right now may turn out to be just around the corner and closer than you think. Okay, thanks for bearing with me. As promised, we're gonna close with the oldest of my unposted videos, my live coverage of the case of Angie Diaz from back in January of 2023, as well as the relevant updates and developments that have occurred since, including the murderer's trial and conviction and where everything is now. A truly strange case that left more questions in its wake than answers, didn't receive a lot of media coverage, and despite the fact that the murderer's final sentencing only took place a month ago at the time of recording, most people still aren't even aware of who Angie was, let alone the horrible things that happened to her. So, without further ado,
Allow me to inform you. Angie Diaz was a Nicaraguan immigrant who came to the United States in 2019 to reunite with her mother, who herself had emigrated several years earlier to help support their family back in Nicaragua. Despite working 2 jobs to not only support herself, but to help pay for her aunt's cancer treatment back home, she was always smiling and full of joy. One of the biggest contributors to that joy was her longtime friend and recent husband, 21-year-old Jared Dicus. Angie and Dicus had met at one of her jobs, a store called Cheap's Meat Market, shortly after her arrival in the country, and after dating for several years, finally decided to tie the knot in October of 2022. They moved in together in a small home behind Dicus's parents' house on the same property. Friends and family said that Diaz was very happy with her new husband. They did have occasional arguments like any couple, and the police had been called to their home on at least 2 previous occasions due to domestic issues. It's unclear if Angie or Dicus themselves made any of these calls, or if it was a family member or some other outside person, but overall, the couple seemed happy and well suited to each other. However, on January 11th, 2023, after only being married for 2 months, this perception would drastically change. Police received a call at 4:18 p.m. from Dicus's father, reporting a possible deceased person in the small home Angie and Dicus shared. Police arrived shortly thereafter to find a gruesome, bloody scene. In the bedroom of the home, they found the body of an unidentified female with multiple stab wounds to the back. Unidentified because she didn't have a head. Dicus reportedly knew about the call to police and remained at the scene until they arrived, at which time he and the rest of his family were immediately taken in for questioning, and an investigation began. By examining the body, police were able to determine that the head had been removed with a kitchen knife. After searching the property, in the shower, they found a bloody kitchen knife and the severed head of 21-year-old Angie Diaz. Here's lead investigator Sheriff Troy Guidry discussing the incident.
The father of the suspect made the initial call to dispatch. The way it sounds, they immediately called when they found the victim. She was found in the back of the second home. This did happen at 4:18 as the initial call that came in. Upon arrival, they did find a deceased person inside the house. It was a portion of a body dismembered, residence that was covered in blood. It's a gruesome scene at best. Everything happened on the property, and all parts and pieces were recovered and submitted for evidence. There has been prior calls disturbance-wise, but nothing to this effect and to this level of violence. At this stage, we do have a confession, but it is still under further investigation. The suspect placed into custody for what we're assuming is going to be a murder charge in the end. It is gruesome. It's a gruesome crime, and hopefully everything turns out to be end up the best way it can. The best you can say is that's the world we live in today, and it's a gruesome scene, and both sides of these families are going to be altered by it. Either way, suspect and or the victims.
Initially, it seemed that Dicus didn't want to talk to police, refusing to give a statement. However, after speaking to the rest of his family and interrogating him for several hours, Dicus would confess to the murder. The possible motive has yet to be put forward. Surveillance footage was obtained from the store where Diaz worked, showing Dicus entering the store, grabbing a beer, and returning to his car without paying, before cracking it open, taking a sip, and driving away. As Angie's time of death is estimated to be around 11 a.m. the day before the arrest, and this footage is from noon of that same day, it's believed this video shows Dicus in the moments immediately following the murder. Dicus is currently being held in a Waller County jail on $500,000 bail. This was actually a point of contention with Diaz's family and the district attorney, as they felt with Dicus's violent history, coupled with the severity of the crime, it should have been much higher. The judge agreed, and his bail was raised to a full $1 million, which, surprisingly, he hasn't been able to cover, so he's remained incarcerated ever since. Part of that violent history they were referring to was his erratic behavior at the police station after his arrest, despite how calmly he waited for police to arrive at the crime scene, fully aware that they were on their way to arrest him. At the station, he made threats against officers and staff, punched out several windows, and eventually had to be restrained in one of those jail chairs with the bag on his head. Also, due to his history of that type of behavior and the severity of the crime, the DA's office raised questions about the state of Dicus's mental health, but after being examined, he was deemed competent to stand trial. That ultimately wouldn't really matter though, because he eventually took a plea deal of just 40 years in prison. You may be surprised that's all he ended up getting, especially considering this happened in Texas, of all states, but the DA's office discussed the deal with Diaz's family before offering it to Dicus, to make sure they were okay with it, in the hopes of sparing them the trauma of a trial and having to hear about the terrible things that were done to their loved one in excruciating detail, over and over for days on end, which, honestly, is pretty fair. In a quick, unrelated piece of information, it also came to light during the investigation that Diaz was an undocumented immigrant, though I'm sure this had absolutely nothing to do with Dicus's uncharacteristically generous plea deal. He'll technically be eligible for parole as early as 2043, but Texas parole boards aren't exactly known for their leniency, so it's highly likely that he will serve every last minute of his 40-year sentence, meaning he'll be enjoying the amenities of the Bird Unit prison facility in Huntsville, Texas until 2063. Unless he does something dumb while he's in there, which, let's face it, is pretty likely, so it'll probably be even longer, which is fine by me. Oddly enough though, while I was doing research on the updates for this case, I came across an absurd amount of comments talking about stuff like how Dicus was innocent, or that Angie deserved what happened, or, strangest of all, how attractive Dicus is, like he has his own simp/fan club. And while I know plenty of killers have fans, those are usually the ones who receive large amounts of national media coverage, whereas this case barely got coverage at all, even locally. So, just another thing to add to the list of weird, unanswered questions about this case. Which, speaking of, while this case definitely is strange and does raise a number of questions, I imagine there wouldn't be quite so many if the reporting on the case was done with more care. Every article I read about this case either changed, got wrong, or outright omitted a number of facts, to the point it almost felt like playing a game of telephone. An article would be written, the next publication would quickly skim it over and then write their story from memory, seemingly with no fact-checking or contacting of the families, save it, publish it, and the cycle would repeat. I'm honestly not exactly sure why this was the case, but one possibly contributing factor could be Angie's status as an illegal immigrant. In fact, despite it not really having anything to do with the case, pretty much every source that covered it made sure to point that out and really drive it home. And finally, shortly after Angie's death, a GoFundMe campaign was created by her uncle to raise money in the hopes of getting Angie's body back from the government and back to Nicaragua to have a proper funeral. It started with a goal of $35,000 and within 48 hours was 90% met. They stopped accepting donations shortly after reaching their goal for a grand total of $37,915. Thanks to this, they were able to have a funeral for Angie later that month in Magnolia, Texas, for her friends and loved ones in the United States. Then had her body returned to her hometown of El Vallejo in Nicaragua, where they held another service for her family and loved ones there, including her aunt that she'd been sending money to for cancer treatments, who's actually still alive, somewhat thanks to Angie and her contributions to her recovery. And with that, you've made it to the end. Thanks to June's Journey for the delightful phone call earlier, and thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing. And I seriously hope you guys are prepared for the level of intensity that Season 2 is already packing. See you next time, where as always, we'll investigate, interrogate, commentate, and commemorate.
Have a good one.